Now, once we are done with the arterial supply of the spinal cord, there has to be a venous drainage that's also attached to this particular region. The spinal cord and the vertebral column is basically drained into the superior and the inferior vena cavas accordingly. So what are the different branches that are basically draining into these particular regions? This is the ostium vena cava superioris, which is also known as the superior vena cava opening. And then we have the vena cava inferior, also known as the inferior vena cava. So these are the different major drainage points that we're going to discuss, but there are obviously the subdivisions that are going to drain accordingly. First of all, we have this sulcus vena subclavia that is present over here on both sides, right as well as left. So there are two lateral points of entry that are going to basically subsequently drain into the superior vena cava. These are the vena jugularis, that is basically the jugular vein, and the brachiocephalic veins that are being attached on the right side. The vertebral veins, they go basically hand in hand. There are two lateral vertebral veins that are present and that are draining the blood from the spinal cord as well as from the vertebral columns, draining into the jugular vein and draining ultimately into the subclavian and then subsequently into the superior vena cava. So these are the profunda cervicalis that is present over here. It is again directly draining into the brachiocephalic veins. On the other hand, we have the accessory hemiazygous veins that are again draining the blood from both the sides, and they are entering into the ultimately into the superior vena cava. Moreover, we have the intercostalis posterior veins that are the subdivisions, that are the smaller branches that are basically going to collect the venous drainage. Then we have this arcus vena azygos, which is basically running on the left side. So this is again one of the very important and the major veins, the azygos vein. And this is the hemiazygous vein on the other side, contralaterally. We have the vena spinalis anterior, which is running through and through in the spinal cord, as well as it is collecting blood from the vertebral columns and is going to ultimately drain into the brachiocephalic or either the azygous veins, depending upon the different segments that it is going to drain. So the thoracolumbar segments, they're going to drain in the inferior regions, and the superior segments are obviously going to drain into the brachiocephalic veins and subsequently into the superior vena cava. Over here, we even look at the fact that the different lumbar segments are basically drained by the segmental lumbalis veins in this particular lumbar region. And then we have the vena terminalis over here, and that is particularly going to drain ultimately into the vein that is present basically anteriorly to the spine, also known as the vena spinalis anterior, that is present over here. So these particular branches are going to drain into this vena spinalis anterior, which is a single vein and is going to ultimately drain into the superior or either the inferior vena cavas. Now, these are again the subdivisions. We have a vena lumbalis ascendens, we have a vena terminalis, and then moreover, we have the vena lumbalis ascendens that is present on the other side as well. So we have these two ascending lumbar veins that are present, and that they're basically going to drain accordingly to this particular phenomena. Then we have the fifth vena lumbalis over here. And then particularly we have the vena iliaca that is present over here. So these are the particular drainage points that we have to even remember, the branches, the subdivisions, and then the major entry points that are basically the superior and the inferior vena cava over here. So when we look at the cut section, now we know that we have the two median veins, the anterior spinalis vein, and then we have the posterior median spinalis vein. So this is how it looks like. This is the anterior median vein, and then we have this posterior median vein. And then there are obviously the drainage points that are going to enter directly or indirectly into these particular anterior as well as the posterior median veins over here. Particularly, we have the segmental branches, also known as the posterior radiculomedullary veins, ultimately draining into the posterior median vein. and entering the azygous or the hemiazygous veins accordingly. And this is the anterior radiculomedullary vein. So we have both an anterior and a posterior radiculomedullary vein draining subsequently into the anterior median vein and consequently into the posterior median vein. And these are the radial veins. So through and through, when we look at the cut section of the spinal cord, we know that the gray and the white matter is being drained by the radial veins. They are basically forming a fan-shaped structure, a corona radiating type of factors that are present over here. So these radiations, due to these radiations, these are basically named accordingly, and they're known as the radial veins, and they are ultimately draining anteriorly, or either they're draining posteriorly in the median veins. Then this is a pile network. So as we studied, we have a vasa corona or arteria vasa corona, which is basically a network formed by the anterior and the posterior spinal arteries. And over here, we have a pile venous network as well that goes hand in hand, which is basically formed by the subdivisions or the communications between the posterior median vein as well as in the anterior median vein. And these communications are going to provide a network-like venous drainage and is present only at a lower degree. So this was all for this particular lecture, and you can even download our app and get access to our lectures. So thank you for watching sqadia.com.